Welcome to the wonderful world of Chapter 4. Welcome back to my humble abode. Hopefully, these little videos are helping you understand the chapters a little bit better. I'm looking forward to hearing your speeches eventually when you get to record them and send them to me. But today we're going to talk about nonverbal communication. And it's probably one of my favorite subject matters in communication. And maybe that's because that's what I did my dissertation on, not necessarily nonverbal communication, but the loss of nonverbal communication. Because there's been a lot of research on nonverbal. And for example, a smile, a blind person that has never seen a smile smiles just like anybody else. It's not a learned thing by seeing other people smile. When you're happy, you smile, and it's a genetic thing. But when you lose the ability to see nonverbal cues, you have to learn to communicate differently. And that's what I did my research on. So why does nonverbal communication matter? Well, it matters because it's more convincing and it communicates emotion. If you're normally well kept and well dressed, and all of a sudden one day your friend sees you and you're disheveled and your hair's messed up and you haven't shaved, and they understand something isn't right before even talking to you. So it's that and a lot of other things that make it more convincing. A lot of times we believe what we see and not necessarily what we hear. Is if the person is you probably had this statement from your mother: look at me, because I can tell if you're lying. As soon as you believe they can tell if you're lying, the fear starts showing in you, and they can tell. So nonverbal communication is more convincing. Different functions of nonverbal communication. Repeating. If you're talking to somebody and you say yes and you're doing this, you're kind of repeating it. So it helps to accentuate it. Another thing is like when something happened to me being blind, I was in the restroom and I said, "Where's the paper towels?" And the guy said, "Over there." And it's like, I don't know where over there is. And so I said, "Well, where's over there?" And he yelled, "Over there." And I said, "Look, I'm blind, I'm not deaf," because I didn't know if he was pointing that way or pointing that way, because you couldn't see in my hands before I raised them up to the camera. So it repeats, over there to the right or left or whatever direction you're going. Accenting, stressing a word. A lot of times I noticed when I was a student, professors would get loud when there was something important they wanted you to pay attention to, and maybe it's going to be on the test. Well, I found I got a big mouth anyway. So when I want to accent something, generally I get softer and more soft-spoken. Because when I get soft-spoken, everybody's like, something's different. He's listening. They listen. So, accenting it. Conflicting. If somebody says, do you want to go to the store? No, I don't want to go. That would be repeating. But what if you said, no, I don't want to go? It's conflicting. You look at somebody, you feeling all right? Because, we've been around each other for a while, and you don't look like you're feeling all right. No, I feel fine. The nonverbal, their demeanor and everything else conflicts with the words coming out of their mouth. Complimenting. When somebody says, "You're listening?" Yeah, I'm listening. You kind of lean forward. You compliment it. Regulating. You regulate the conversation. You have a pause and they know it's their turn to talk. You raise your hand because you have a question. You make eye contact with somebody that in a group that's being quiet because you want them to jump in. Substituting. Well, where's so-and-so? So maybe you're not going to say, "I don't know." You're substituting a gesture or a nonverbal way to communicate for a answer. Now, there's different things we have to look at in nonverbal communication. One of them is vocalics. A lot of people get confused about this. Verbal communication is the words coming out of my mouth. Vocalics is how they're coming out of my mouth. What's the pitch that I'm using? Am I talking real high? Am I talking real low? Am I talking real fast? Am I talking real slow? So vocalics are how the words are coming out. That's nonverbal communication. Kinesics is body language. What's your body doing? Are you real stiff? Well, yeah, yeah. Are you real nervous? You know, a lot of times police officers, when they pull somebody over, they have a feeling something's wrong because they're being real nervous. And so, you know, their kinesics, their body language, how are they moving? Gestures. You know, gestures, thumbs up. Okay. One thing you have to worry about gestures is different countries. Gestures are culturally bound. You know, if this means okay, in some countries this means you're an asshole. What's this mean? You crazy? Well, down in Argentina, it means you have a phone call. So a lot of times that, you know, gestures mean something to you that they don't mean the same thing to other people. When I was in Peru, I was talking about my children, and I said I got one this tall, one this tall, and one this tall. And this Peruvian that I was talking to kind of giggled, and I said, what? And they said, well, when we're talking about our children, they're this tall. Talking about animals, they're this tall. So you just called your kids animals. I said, so you've met them. So it wasn't anything that really caused harm, but sometimes you have to be careful about that. Emblems, hand signals. When most of you know what this means. This means peace. Well, this does not mean peace in other countries. This means the same thing that does. So, in Australia, George Bush was going, and they had this big peace demonstration when he was the president, and they said, they had a big sign that said peace, and he said peace. Basically, he flipped them all off. So one day we drove up to Subway, and we were getting out of the truck, and my wife, my son, and I, and this kid inside going, and I was like, excuse me? And my son, oh, that's a friend of mine. He's just saying hi. I said, well, tell him he needs to learn to say hi differently when your parents are around. Because he didn't mean anything by it, but he was picking on my son, and that's the way they had to communicate non-verbally between the two of them. But that's not what I understood it to be. Emblems and hand signals. Well, we just kind of covered some of those hand signals, so we'll leave it at that. Illustrators. You know, I caught a fish this big. Was it this big or was it this big? Illustrators reinforce the nonverbal that you're talking about. Affects. Are they smiling? Are they happy? Are they frowning? Are they sad? You know, what is the facial expression and what message is it giving you? Proxemics. Proxemics are also culturally bound. Proxemics are the distance between two people. And it's gender, race, and sexual orientation all play for proxemics. Here in the United States, we have basically 4 distances that we worry about. Intimate, 0 to 18 inches. Personal, 18 inches to 4 feet. Social, 4 feet to 12 feet. And public, beyond 12 feet. But like I said, it's culturally bound. When I was in the Army in the Far East, and I met another man He grabbed me and kissed me on both cheeks. It was like, okay, I understood that that was their cultural norm, and I had to deal with it. When I was in Germany, you know, right now if you go to McDonald's or Subway or anywhere else and you get your tray and you walk in and you look around and you look for an empty table, especially nowadays with social distancing, we have empty tables between everybody. But when I was in Europe before social distancing, I would be like the only person at a table for four. And next thing I know, there was three more people sitting at that table. Now they'd walk up and they'd ask if it was free, and I'd say yeah, and they'd sit down and they'd eat because you know they're used to being that much closer. But you'd never see anything like that in the United States. Elevators. If you want to see people freak out, be the last person on the elevator and don't turn around to face the door. Keep facing everybody else. You have just invaded their social space. Now they understand that you've got to be packed in and you're going to be in that intimate distance even though you're not intimate with them. And intimate does not necessarily mean sex, folks. But if you get on the elevator and don't turn around and face the door, it just drives people bonkers because you've invaded their space. You've done something that wasn't the norm. Another thing is get on the elevator and have you and one other person on the elevator go stand next to them. It drives them up the wall because they don't know what you're doing. Now, please, if you're a guy my size and there's a girl in the elevator, don't do that because you're really going to freak her out because you don't know what she's gone through. And if you're a girl, don't do it to a guy because he's going to follow you all over campus saying she likes me because he doesn't understand. So proximance is the distance that we have between us. And it's culturally bound in different places. Territoriality. Territoriality is this is mine. You know, if we were in class, after about the first week or so, everybody sits in the same spot they always do. Because this is my chair. If you come in after 2 weeks of class and you sit down where somebody else normally sits, it's kind of like, he violated me. That's my space. He invaded it. Another thing is contamination. Contamination is where you put your books in your book bag and your cooler and your drink in somebody else's space to give you more space. You know, you contaminate the space around you to keep people away from you. It's not such a big deal anymore, especially with social distancing, but it's like in a restaurant. You know, my wife and I would sit down at the little table for two, and that table is never big enough for two people. So the next table over, I'd set my drink down. So I kind of contaminated that area so nobody would sit there. It wasn't because I was trying to be mean or anything else. It's just that I needed more room. So, environment. Environment is your space. You know, what is your space? Well, my office is my space, and right now it's like a mess. But my room in the barracks when I was in the Army was my space. It was my environment. You know, and there was something called impression management. I would do certain things to my room because I liked it and I wanted other people to like it, and I tried to manage their impression. One thing that I did many years ago was I was a boy from the South and I had a rebel flag. And one day I was in my room drinking beer with a buddy of mine who happened to be black. He kept looking at the flag, and I said, "What's wrong?" And he explained to me what that flag meant to him. And I took the flag down and never put it up again. I wanted to manage the impression other people had of my room, and I had one idea from my cultural perspective, but I found out that culturally it meant other things to other people, and it wasn't what I wanted to impress on other people. Because of different reactions to my environment, I changed my environment. Chronetics. I'll get it right one of these days. I've been teaching this for years and I still can't say chrometics. But chrometics is about time. What about time? What does that have to do with nonverbal communication? Well, once again, it's culturally bound. And I believe in chapter 3, I was telling you about, I told them I was in Peru and I told somebody I'd meet them the next morning, and it meant something completely different to them than it did to me. You know, I am an old soldier. I'd rather be an hour early than a minute late. Other people, they don't have that much. Yeah, you know, a minute late here and there, it doesn't matter. You know, so it's different for different people, and it sends different messages. To me, you know, it bothers me when somebody's late. When somebody says that, yeah, I'm working on my basement. Somebody says, well, I'll come over tomorrow and help you. Okay, you know, to me that's like in the morning, and you know, I've had my son-in-law and I've had my son show up at 4:35 in the afternoon. I came to help you, and it's like, yeah, I'm kind of done what I needed help with because you know nobody showed up. So you know, time is definitely a nonverbal thing. Emoticons and emojis is definitely nonverbal, and it's used in all kinds of communications from text messages to emails, and it's a nonverbal way of saying something. I love you. I hate you. My prayers are with you. Eye behavior. Eye behavior. What are your eyes doing? Are they looking at me eye to eye? And I mentioned in the nonverbal, in the verbal class that I had a Korean instructor that didn't want me to call him Dr. Zhang because I was older than him. But in Asia, if you look at somebody in the eye that's older than you, it's insulting. In the United States, you know, and I'm looking at somebody and they're not looking at me, it's kind of like, you're ignoring me. What's your eyes doing? And eyes can tell us a lot, especially nowadays since most people are wearing masks. You can't tell what their mouth is doing, but you can see their eyes. And what are their eyes doing? Are they looking at you or are they looking at their phone? Yeah, I was on the front porch one day and my wife came out and said something to me. And the whole time, you know, I'm on the phone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And after she walked in the house, I realized that was rude. You know, I shouldn't have been doing this. I should have been looking at her. So I've made it a point now when somebody talks to me, I put my phone down and I look at them. Haptics. Haptics is touch. Touch is one way we have communicated since early childhood. When a baby's crying, they pick them up. They pick them up, they touch them, they comfort them, they quit crying. There was actually after the fall of the Iron Curtain, there were some researchers that went into a orphanage, and in the orphanage there was like 60 cribs, and it was eerily silent. And the reason it was silent is because in the past the kids would cry and somebody would pick them up, but they had one worker to take care of all these babies, and so they started at this end and they went to that end and fed them, changed them, next one, fed them, changed them, next one. So the kids realized that crying was not communicating anything, because if they cried, nobody would come pick them up because it wasn't your turn yet. And there's been plenty of studies that have shown that waiters and waitresses, wait staff, if they touch you on the shoulder, they generally get a bigger tip. There was a study where this one guy about my age was fumbling, trying to get on a bus, and he dropped a bunch of stuff, and a young lady touched the guy and said, "Can you help?" And everybody kind of looked, but if she touched the guy on the shoulder, they're more likely to help. Teachers would go up to, Johnny, can touch him on the shoulder, can you do this math problem? And so don't be running around telling everybody Vern said it's okay to touch people, because you can't. I mean, things have changed. Society has changed. You don't just go around touching people. But touch is something that's very important to us. If you have a significant other, holding hands, just touching somebody on the shoulder is important to us. A hug is important to us. My mother is 90 years old and she's in an assisted living facility. And I can go see her. I can wave to her. Hey, Mom. I can't get within 10 feet. I can't hug her. And the first couple of times it hurt a lot. But, you know, I realized that I don't want my mom to get sick, so it's something I have to do. But I miss being able to hug my mom. I miss being able to touch. I think it's something that's important to all of us. So that's chapter 4. I hope this has helped. I will post the video and the speaker's notes, and hopefully it helps you to understand what we're talking about. If you have any questions, you can call me. You have my phone number in the syllabus. You can email me, and I'm looking forward to seeing your speeches whenever time comes. Bye-bye.